Supersize Me may just be one of the most famous documentaries ever made, as well as one of the most controversial. Though acclaimed in its day for shedding light on the unhealthy lifestyle of Americans and how the fast food industry has done nothing to help this problem and instead tends to make things worse, the documentary has nonetheless faced criticism in the years after its release for what many view as manipulative editing and Morgan Spurlock omitting certain facts when it came to his infamous experiment. So keeping all of that in mind, today I would like to try and explore if the famous documentary is actually a good one, or if history's harsher judgment of it is indeed the more accurate one. And there will be spoilers for this documentary ahead, so in case you wish to view it from an unbiased perspective first, you might want to come back to this video after you've watched it. There will be no other spoiler warnings in this video. Okay, so as most of you undoubtedly already know, in order to make light of the unhealthy eating styles of Americans and to show just how bad for you fast food really is for the body, Morgan Spurlock goes on a binge where he eats things only sold on the McDonald's menu for 30 days straight and documents the negative changes that happen to his body with the help of 3 doctors. And let me just sum it up by saying, the results are basically the most effective food horror movie you'll ever see. However, as I've already mentioned, Spurlock has come under fire for his methods in the documentary, as well as outside of it, but I won't be addressing that in this video, for quite a few reasons. And just to name a few, he failed to mention that he was a vegan for a while before he started his binge because of his girlfriend, which made his reaction to the sudden consuming of fast food meats all the more extreme. He deliberately held back on exercising in order to reflect the average American, and many believe his estimates on how little Americans exercised were inaccurate. And perhaps the biggest criticism was his omission that he had had a drinking problem for years before he did the documentary. And as a result, many have argued that a lot of the health problems he ends up suffering from are actually the result of alcoholism or alcohol withdrawal, thus making his experiment null and void, as it both doesn't reflect the average American's health, and it makes it impossible to know which side effects are actually caused by the fast food. Now, with all of this extra context, it's really no wonder why both the documentary and Spurlock have come under fire. But even with all of that, the question still has to be asked. Does Supersize Me still work as an effective documentary? And honestly, I would have to say yes. Though obviously Spurlock should have either not omitted those facts or found somebody with a healthier body to do his experiment on, he was still saying something worth saying. America was suffering from an obesity and unhealthy eating epidemic at the time of the documentary, and while it obviously didn't prove to be a miracle fix or anything like that, it was still a pretty effective way of addressing the problem. Because Spurlock does make light of a lot of issues that were very real at the time, such as people being uninformed on the true nutritional value of most of the things they eat, schools' inability to teach the kids the importance of healthy eating and exercising, and even somewhat encouraging bad eating habits, as well as the fast food industry's stranglehold in several different areas. Spurlock didn't exaggerate any of that, and it was all a very real problem. And his making light of people's unhealthy lifestyles and the unhealthiness of fast food were also issues that did need to be addressed. Heck, even if his methods weren't exactly the most honest or ethical, it may have just been the most effective way to get a message that needed to get across to people. Seeing him suffer from all these health problems after only eating fast food, it might have just been a really big wake-up call to a lot of people in the early 2000s. I'd even guarantee you that a couple of people never picked up a fast food burger again after watching this. And ultimately, that was the goal of the documentary, to get people to realize just how unhealthy they'd been eating and show that they need to change their habits or suffer the consequences for it. Basically, what I'm saying here is that this documentary still has a lot to offer in terms of showing the importance of healthy eating and, shall we say, the less glamorous side of the fast food industry. The point is, for its time, it addressed something that needed to be addressed. And even with Spurlock's omission of facts, it honestly did, and to an extent still does, that job very effectively. It said things that needed to be said, pointed out facts that needed to be pointed out, and got the public's attention on an issue that needed their attention. And people's obsession with healthy eating these days may actually be in part due to this documentary. Again, criticize his methods all you want, it's completely warranted. But I have no doubt it saved a few lives in the long run. Okay, so to put it all simply, I honestly believe that Supersize Me is not only still a good documentary, but one that needed to be made and get attention when it did. Now, am I saying that Spurlock's omissions were the right way to go about it? No, of course not. If you're going to do a documentary like this, you should be totally upfront and honest with your audience, and I'll be the first person to say it. I'm just saying that it was probably still a real eye-opener for many people, and it deserves recognition for that, if nothing else. Or to put it another way, Spurlock's methods can most definitely be criticized, but the documentary should still get proper recognition for raising awareness on the dangers of unhealthy eating. And that's also not taking into account all the things Spurlock says and shows that are completely accurate. So in the end, while I'd say it is worthy of some criticism, it is still a pretty good documentary, if only for the effect it had on the people and the general public as a whole. Again, it was something that needed to be addressed when it was made, and while Spurlock could have done a better job of conveying that message, the results were still extremely far-reaching and is still a somewhat effective watch even years after the fact. And I do honestly believe it is worthy of some praise, if only for that alone. Alright, I think I've cleaned my plate on this topic. So now I'd like you to tell me, do you believe that Supersize Me is still a good documentary despite Morgan Spurlock stretching the truth on certain matters? Or do you believe it's overrated and has aged horribly? Please let me know in the comments. And like usual, you don't have to agree with anything I said if you don't want to. You're entitled to your own opinion on this, and you can think I've got it completely backwards if you want to. And let me also just once again clarify that I'm not condoning Spurlock's methods, simply giving credit to the parts of the documentary that got what it was trying to do right, up to and including the intended audience reaction. But once again, I don't approve or condone his omitting facts, especially the important ones. And finally, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you all next time.